What's up, fellas? Sort of hitting you with a different type of video today. I'm not in front of my computer. I'm outside. I don't have a PowerPoint, so I may deviate from the topics, but just something I was thinking about, I thought I would share. I'm strolling, and I'm supposing that I would share, so maybe we'll call this a stroll and suppose. I was having a conversation with my wife earlier. We were talking about sort of the biohacking craze, right? Hacking your biology with things like cold plunges. I'm sure everybody is aware of those. If you're not aware, it's getting in cold water for a set amount of time to try to get benefits, trying to get those bennies from the cold water. And then sort of the opposite would be like sauna, being in the sauna, red light therapy, any of those things. And there's all these articles. If you look up, you know how it is. You can get what do they call it? Just, I don't know, search engine bias is what I'm calling it. There's a real term where if you're looking for info and facts that support exactly the way you feel about something, you can find it just by looking in the search engine, because you're not searching for, you know, the most unbiased standard, you know, here's the facts. You're searching for key items that support your own thought process of it, right? But you could look up and be like, what are the benefits of cold plunge? You know, why do people do these ice plunges, cold therapy? What are the benefits? And you can find, you know, possibly ChatGPT generated blog articles that are listing off all the bennies, apparently. And some of them are legit. And then you can find the same thing for saunas, for red light therapy, for just hot heat exposure. And there is some science behind it. There's cold shock proteins, heat shock proteins, activating your brown fat, things to do with I think your heart rate and your core temperature. There's all kinds of stuff, right? So the science is legit. And so a lot of people start thinking, okay, well then, is it better for people that are constantly exposed to that to live in those environments? You know, people that live in like Minnesota, for example, that are constantly exposed to the cold, like, are they just naturally getting those benefits by being outside, by living in that environment? What about people that live in the desert? And we've had the data for years. I looked this up recently. The answer is no, right? The lowest all-cause mortality rates, meaning the least amount of people that die from anything every single year, are people that live close to the equator, right? So they live near water and they live in warm environments, not desert environments, not 120 degree environments where it's like heat shock therapy, and not in Minnesota, not in Michigan, not swimming in Lake Michigan. Those people aren't necessarily dying more, but they just don't have the data that supports that they live longer, like all this information that's, you know, propagating cold plunge therapy and stuff would suggest, right? So if we have all this data that says constant exposure, or not, maybe not constant, but like consistent targeted exposure to extreme cold and extreme heat has all these benefits, and they does all this stuff to help you be healthier, to optimize your body, to live longer, to live at a higher state for a longer period of your life, a longer duration of your life is spent in a higher quality living space, then why does the data across the world say that if you live like in Florida, or, you know, you live in Mexico, but like near the water where it's more temperate, why do those people live the longest and have, you know, the least all-cause mortality rates? And I've read some theories on this. I'll give you my theory, which is maybe being uncomfortable is a good thing, right? Maybe people who are more consistently in uncomfortable environments are people that are going to live longer. Here's what I mean by it. The people that live in the cold environments, like Michigan, like Minnesota, are going to be more likely to stay inside in a conditioned environment where it's just the right temperature. You know, there's artificial light for as long as you want there to be until you turn it off in the day. There is the right amount of moisture. You can, you know, add moisture. You can use a humidifier if you're in a cold environment, or if you're in a really hot environment, you can dehumidify. You know, you can limit your UV light exposure, even though we know that you need it to get vitamin D and to be healthy, but then too much can cause cancer. There's all this info, and maybe the people who live in those environments, those extreme environments where you'd think they would get all these benefits, just spend more time in conditioned environments. They spend more time comfortable where their body doesn't have to work, where they don't have to do things to keep themselves healthy, right? And then you have the small percentage of people that live in Michigan that are going to go swim in Lake Michigan, even when it's cold as cold as frick out there. They're going to go and do their own natural ice plunge. They're going to get outside and take walks. They're going to run even when it's cold because their body's adaptable. They put on layers. They just get used to it being cold. Or the opposite, right? People that live in desert, arid environments, they're just better at making themselves comfortable even when they're outside. They're better at cooling themselves off. They're more likely to stay hydrated. They're more likely to stay in shaded environments, but be outside and be moving. They do their work in the early parts of the day and then stay inside when it's hot. So they're more productive. Maybe their circadian rhythm's better because they're getting up earlier. There's a million reasons why somebody could be uncomfortable, and then it actually makes them a healthier individual. It actually makes them more prone to be active, better at comforting themselves, at regulating their temperature, not by being inside an air-conditioned or heated environment, but regulating it through clothing, movement, the way that they eat, strategically being outside at certain times or doing things, or just adapting, right? We know that people are just built different in some places. They can just deal with the heat or they can deal with the cold, and it's not magic. It's their body adapting to those environments. So that's my theory, right? Is maybe the data that says these things are good for you, being exposed to uncomfortable environments in limited amounts, maybe it's all legit. Maybe it's good for you. And the reason we don't see that data reflected is because the masses don't do that. They stay inside. They turn on the lights. Don't get me wrong. I like it to be cold when I'm sleeping. I'm not getting a great night's sleep in the summer when it's 80 degrees outside and I'm hot. I get back sweat, So I like a conditioned environment. So I'm not trying to disparage that. I'm just saying, maybe our ability to deal with being uncomfortable and then find ways to make it find ways to make it fun. Maybe that's what contributes to us living longer because we're staying more active. We're more resilient. We eat better. We get our work done, strategically. We're more prone to move, stay active. We're not going to tear our ACL because we never, walk or run. Think about that. At some point in your life, you jump for the last time and you never jump again. That sounds ridiculous, but think of an 80-year-old and you think about most 80-year-olds, they're not going to jump. When was the last time they jumped? Was it when they were 70? Probably not. It was probably when they were like 40. That was probably the last time they jumped. And they might have stopped jumping just because they don't do things that require them to jump, even hop. They don't play. They don't do work that requires that. And maybe when they were in their 40s, they jumped and they tore their ACL. They got hurt. Well, why did that happen? You don't just get old and start falling apart. You do, but we know that if you don't use something, you lose it, right? So at some point in their life, they stopped doing things that caused them to jump, to move, to squat down, to step up. Obviously when you get really old, your prefrontal lobe and your gray matter starts to break down. So doing things like going up and down the stairs is hard because you lose that coordination. But it's not like when you're 60, all of a sudden the stairs are just dangerous for you. You just stopped moving your muscles and using your brain and being coordinated in that way. So this is a tangent. I guess what I'm trying to say is these things that make us resilient and capable and adaptable are super contingent on our ability to use them, our frequency that we use them. And at some point, people just stop. They just stop going outside. At some point, people just stop putting on a coat and they're like, I'm not going to go outside in the winter. It's too cold. Or I'm not going to go outside in the summer. It's too hot. I'm just going to stay inside. Right. And then they do less and less and less. And so maybe people that live in temperate environments are able to go outside and do those things longer. And then they move more and then they don't age as fast. And then they have a lower all mortality cause rate. That's just my theory. I'll be honest. It kind of, it slaps. It's a good theory. I would say it's airtight. It's rock solid. It's technically not a theory. The real definition would be a hypothesis because I don't have any hypothesis testing methods for this at this time. If anybody wants to support me and give me millions of dollars to test it, I promise I'll use it for that and not buy soft drinks.